Welcome to ACR On Air, the official podcast of the American College of Rheumatology, where we have engaging conversations with leading rheumatology professionals on topics such as the latest research on rheumatic diseases, solutions for addressing practice management issues, legislative policies impacting patient care, and more. Here's your host.
Welcome back to another episode of ACR On Air, the official podcast of the American College of Rheumatology. I am your host, Dr. John Hausman. Show notes for this episode can be found at acronair.org. You can find our previous episodes on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Stitcher Radio, and on your favorite podcast app. I cannot be more excited for ACR Convergence 2022. After 2 years of online meetings, I'm really ready to get out of the house and into a convention center. ACR Convergence 2022, the world's premier rheumatology experience, will be held on November 10th through the 14th at the Pennsylvania Convention Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. ACR Convergence 2022 will be hosted in person with opportunities to view content virtually and on demand. To get a preview of what to expect, we've invited Dr. Sharon Kolasinski, the Planning Committee Chair of ACR Convergence 2022, to discuss all of your favorite Convergence activities, some new stuff that's coming this year, as well as what to do in Philly in between sessions. I hope you enjoyed the show. Sharon, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, John. I'm delighted to be here.
ACR Convergence 2022. Certainly one of my favorite times of the year. And I'm so excited to see that for this year's program, it's actually going to be in person and parts of it are going to be hybrid. How did you guys think about creating a program that will address the needs for people that would like to be in person versus those that would prefer to have a virtual meeting?
Well, it's been really exciting to take the lessons that we learned from the last 2 years, where we had a completely virtual meeting, and understand the benefits. So we had a huge increase in our international audience. We had a great increase in our U.S. audience that might not have been able to come to the meeting before. The people who were staying back home to be on call or who had family obligations or work obligations could tune in. And so we wanted to maintain that as much as possible. Yet we are delighted to be able to be offering a back in-person program again. So there's a combination of events throughout each day that are available live, that will be live streamed to our remote audience, and that will be available on demand later for both our live audience and our remote audience to take advantage of in the coming year.
Great. One of my favorite parts of the meeting is usually the networking. So not only the networking that you sort of schedule and have planned to meet with people that are doing, your type of research or your clinical interest, but also the stuff that takes place sort of impromptu when you're waiting in line at the bathroom or when you're walking and shuffling through one session to another. So how did you think about sort of the networking aspect of it when you have part of the meeting be held virtually?
So important. I couldn't agree with you more. Having the ability to talk to colleagues, introduce our trainees, elevate our junior investigators. These are all really important aspects of the meeting as well. And I think that one of the things we did in the last 2 years was create the community hubs as locations where people could come for more specific discussions with people who were interested in the same topics, investigators in the same topics, where they could have both formal presentations and more informal discussions. So we've maintained the communities hubs this year as an all-remote part of the program for networking, but we've also created a variety of opportunities in the in-person space for networking as well.
Great. And I was really excited to see that another one of my favorite sessions from last year was the Global Rheumatology Summit, which is again taking place prior to the beginning of, the official beginning of Convergence. Can you tell me a little bit more about the summit?
I think the Global Summit has been a huge success. It's just been fantastic, bringing together investigators, teachers, health professionals from around the world for bringing our insights together and our experience. The programming has just been fantastic. And again, this year, you're right, the meeting's going to open with the Global Summit, and we're going to have a variety of really great topics.
Yeah, one of the ones I was really looking forward to learning more about is the impacts of climate change and conflict, migration on human health and disease, which is will be one of the sessions at the summit. And I believe the summit will be virtual. Is that right?
That's correct.
Great. And then following the summit, there's the review course. I think one of the great things about the review course is that you don't have to think about which session to attend, right? You just sit there and from
We want to attend all of them, we hope.
9 to 5, it's like a prefix menu, right? Like here's the appetizer, right? Here's the main entree and the dessert. So the review course, is that going to be in person or virtual?
It will be both. So the review course is a series of the most high quality talks. It's so exciting. I think each of us learns so much. It's super great if you're doing board review. Often you can sample topics that might be out of your field or out of what you usually see during the day. So I think it's really fun, really high quality. It'll be a beautiful program again, as usual this year.
Yeah, I was looking at the menu of offerings for the prefix, and I saw Dan Kastner talking about autoinflammatory syndromes, sessions about Raynaud's management, paraneoplastic syndromes. It really sounds like a great menu, and I'm really going to enjoy digging in and learning about all of those things. Are there going to be features for fellows in training during the sessions?
After the Global Summit, the afternoon of Thursday, November 10th, will feature programming for fellows in training. This will be in person and will include a number of topics that will really be of interest to fellows, including career planning, talking about contract negotiations, how to achieve work-life balance, which we all could probably stand to go to that session. And really with speakers aimed particularly at fellows' questions and some roundtable discussions for them to network with each other and with some mentors as well.
Oh, that's amazing. I know for fellows, one of the highlights of the Convergence meeting is the Knowledge Bowl. Tell me about the Knowledge Bowl. Are we going to have another Knowledge Bowl again this year?
Oh, you bet we are. We're going to have a terrific Knowledge Bowl. This has become a real favorite of programs across the country to field their teams and compete for the grand prize of winning the Knowledge Bowl. And the teams, of course, always come up with very creative names. I don't want to say that I have any favorites of the teams, but of the names, I got to admit, I really like Alabamumab. I can't even say it, but Alabamumab, there we go, is a pretty good one. And then episode 2, Return of the Slee Die. I like that. I like that one too. So there's some great ones. I'm sure we'll see some really excellent competition this year.
That's great. Some of the other highlights, of the sessions that people enjoy are like the Thieves Market, the image competition. All those things are going to be highlighted again this year?
You bet. Thieves Market again will be happening this year. And we've got a really interesting roster of cases that people will be presenting. The Thieves Market cases tend to be rare diseases, fascinating presentations, often with a focus on really visually interesting physical findings or imaging findings. A lot of mystery and surprise in the Thieves Market. I think people will enjoy that a lot this year.
That's great. And, one thing that I'm really impressed that I think the ACR does really well is including the patient perspective in sort of everything that they do, right? From writing of the guidelines to including them as part of the Convergence meeting. And there's a section on patient perspectives. Can you talk more about what those sessions are and how they were selected and what patients, are going to be talking about?
You bet. The Patient Perspectives program started several years ago with the intent of bringing patient voices to the meeting and permitting patients to present their own stories. So what happens with the submission for the Patient Perspective program is that the patient needs to be the presenter, And they need to have a sponsoring institution. And usually that's a patient advocacy group or a nonprofit that supports patients with particular disorders. And the patient is invited then to sort of give their story in one of several ways. They might say how they got more engaged in their own healthcare, how they had an idea about how to do things better and put it into practice, how they might have adapted to their disease or to communication with their healthcare team, and talk about that. So the patients bring really personal and wonderful stories to the session. And it's a really nice collaboration with patients as well as their sponsoring institutions.
That's great. Yeah, I've certainly learned a lot from my patients, in every patient interaction. And I'm really happy to hear that you're giving patients a voice as part of the meeting, because I know they certainly, many of them attend the meeting and are more knowledgeable about their disease than many of us are. Tell me about sort of the research aspect, the basic science, the breakthrough basic science research lectures that are going to be featured for this year's meeting.
I think we're going to have a really broad spectrum of basic science presentations this year, really cutting edge, everything from laboratory work, animal work, to new clinical trials, and quite a number of new treatments that are going to be discussed. There are a variety of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials that have been ongoing that we're beginning to see results from. So I think there's going to be a real range of exciting work across the spectrum.
Great. And I was really interested to hear about the great debate, which is the role of DMARDs in subclinical rheumatoid arthritis. How'd you pick that topic? Where'd that come from?
There's been a lot of talk, and increasing talk over years, about what happens before it is obvious, clinically obvious, that somebody has RA. We know about the autoantibodies years perhaps before there's a clinical presentation. What else is going on? And, there's been a lot of observation and speculation about the amount of inflammation or immune dysregulation that might be taking place. Could we intervene even before the disease becomes clinically evident? Well, this is certainly a controversial topic. So we always look for something controversial for the debate. So that's where the idea came from. And we're looking for a lively discussion this year.
That's awesome. I think there's so many highlights. I feel like every time I ask you a question is like, oh, look at this great, interesting thing and this other interesting thing. But there's this really great, interesting thing about the keynote speaker, Dr. Abraham Verghese. What an interesting character. I've read his book, Cutting for Stone, right? And I've heard him, in several videos speak about medicine. And he has such a deep insights into the sort of the practice of medicine that it's always really inspiring to hear. What did you ask him to talk about? What's he going to be talking to us this year?
Well, as you know, he brings an incredible perspective of humanism and generosity about delivering healthcare, being a doctor, being a patient. So we're really, really delighted to have him join us. And I think that he's going to bring some perspective to the last few years of our lives in medicine and in the world.
Oh, that's great.
It should be a really entertaining, delightful, and I hope very meaningful talk for everybody.
Great. And, you mentioned that you wanted to have reproductive health as a sort of special area of focus during the Convergence meeting this year. What do you mean about that? And how are you going to feature reproductive health? I know it's a topic that has long been ignored, but I've seen recently the ACR really seems to be more and more interested in addressing those issues.
I think that you are exactly spot on. The reproductive health issues have always been important for us and for our patients because we have so many patients who are women and women in childbearing years. So it's really been something that we've always strived to make part of our practice. We have guidelines now about reproductive health. And I think that many of us are often involved very closely with our patients in a lot of the decision making for family planning and when it's safe for our patients to begin to think about families and think about children and what the complications might be. So I think that this has always been an important topic. I think this year's Supreme Court decision has focused a lot of people's thinking about what the options are that are available for our patients. But I think there's another aspect to it, which is that methotrexate availability has become something of an issue for some of our patients. And I think this is a way in which a trickle-down effect, which really was not the intention of the recent Supreme Court ruling, could have an impact on the rheumatology community. So many of our members have really contacted us and talked to us about this issue, and we'll be featuring some of that and some of the questions that people are raising as part of the meeting.
Great. Are there any other sessions that you're particularly looking forward to, or any new features of Convergence 2022?
Well, there are a few more. We have a new feature this year called Ignite Talks. So I must say, in the early planning for this meeting was before the Omicron surge, and then we had the Omicron surge, and we recognized that there would be difficulty having poster halls that were traditional poster halls with thousands of people gathered in a single space. And so we wanted to get creative about featuring poster presenters in a way that would permit more interaction. We have all of our posters virtual, and they will be available to everyone who registers for the meeting, whether virtual or in person. But the Ignite Talks will be 5-minute talks by poster presenters on site that will then be in a space that is immediately available for discussion one-on-one between the poster presenter and audience that forms for that poster, just like in the previous poster halls, but not quite on such a massive scale, a little bit more manageable. And also sort of highlighting our poster presenters. We've picked about 250 of the top-ranked posters, and these will be occurring throughout the meeting on all the days of the meeting for people to sample. And so we're hoping that this permits our poster presenters also to meet people face-to-face. Many of them are fellows. Many of them are junior investigators. And we want this to be an aspect of networking that we really haven't been able to do for the last couple of years.
That's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that. I think, Sharon, one thing we haven't discussed is the location. Convergence 22 is happening in your hometown.
It sure is. The beautiful city of brotherly love. We are so delighted that it's going to be in Philadelphia. There's so much to do. There's so much good food in Philadelphia. I just want everybody to know that everybody should look forward to eating very well while they're in Philadelphia.
Great. Are there particular restaurants or particular types of food you recommend?
Oh, there's so many good ones. Well, I will say there is a new area of the city. There are a number of areas of the city that have really developed a bunch of new restaurants. The first I'm going to mention is Passyunk Avenue, which is a little bit beyond the Italian market. And it is just a lovely, low-key area of the city with just fantastic food, many outdoor places to eat if people are interested. Another is the Northern Liberties, which is just north of Center City, where the convention center is. Fabulous, cutting edge, diverse, fantastic restaurants. I really encourage people to look into it. But of course, if it's too much to go running around the city, you could just walk across the street from the convention center and go over to the Reading Terminal Market. Everybody needs to see the Reading Terminal Market at least once and feast. It's very easy, right across the street.
That's awesome. And I know in past meetings, sometimes I've taken my family. They get to walk around, see the museums. What are the highlights for families that are going to be visiting Philadelphia that may not be joining us at the convention center?
Well, there is the Philadelphia Zoo, the nation's first zoo. It's really dear to my heart. There's the Franklin Institute on the Parkway. Kids love it. It's a science museum. The Parkway itself is fun to walk down, and there are a lot of great art museums along the way, the Barnes Foundation, the Rodin Museum, and of course, up at the top of the Parkway, the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Wonderful. The kids actually may love it. There's wonderful exhibits there, but there's also the statue of Rocky at the base of the steps that everybody can take pictures with.
Yeah. Does it play music as you run up the steps or do you have to bring your own music?
No, you need to put that on your phone and play it.
I love it. Sharon, anything else you want to share about the meeting? After our talk, I'm so excited, even more than I was before, about attending.
We really can't wait to see everybody in person. It's just going to be great. We can't wait to welcome you. And if you can't make it in person this year, come on, join us virtually. So much to see and learn and hear about, and we just can't wait.
Fantastic. Sharon, thank you so much for your time.
It's really been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for listening, downloading, subscribing to our show, and for rating us with 5 stars, or however many stars you think we deserve. You can find our show notes for this episode and all our previous episodes at acronair.org, and you can find us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Stitcher Radio. I hope to see all of you in person in Philly during Convergence 2022. Until then, stay healthy.